What's up? I'm B and welcome to my channel. I am super excited to bring you the first ever interview done on my channel. I am thrilled because I got to sit down with Keya's who is a fellow content creator on YouTube, and talk about so many different things. We talked about how her channel got started, her passions outside of YouTube, the Hollises, of course, and so many other things. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and let you watch that interview. And when you are done watching the interview, please be sure to go over to Keya's channel, show her some love, give her a subscribe, give her a like, just let her know that you appreciate her taking the time out of her day to come sit down with me and share some of her story with all of us. I thought it was a really fun conversation, and I hope that you do too. All right, so let's just go ahead and jump into it and get started with the first question, which is, what made you want to start creating content?
Well, I've been in video production for a long time. So I went to school to be a broadcast journalist. And so I thought, like, okay, I'll do video production, but on TV. I went to school, practiced in school, was on the school's college programs, news show. And then I was in local TV news for a couple years. And I did so I was a behind the scenes hybrid person. So I did a lot of writing and social media for the news station.
Okay.
But I also had a segment on the show. So I got to be a part of, like, on camera, kind of doing what I do now, where I was talking about different hot topics and certain things and regarding, like, social media trends. Like, for example, one story I did was when Facebook came up with the emojis that you could put, more than just a thumbs up. So that was like the type of story I would cover. So not hard hitting, not investigative, just like goofy, little segments. And then I moved to a newspaper, and then became more of like a videographer there, did a couple more serious pieces, and started to kind of get like a taste for like more investigative stuff. And then when the recession, when the pandemic happened, two tragedies. When the pandemic happened, I got laid off, and I was like, okay, what do I do now? And it was, as for a lot of people too, it was like a reset point. Like, okay, I've been kind of doing this for the last 5 years. Do I like it? Do I want to go back to it? Do I want to stay in the industry, get out, go back to school? What the hell am I doing? And so I decided, like, okay, I'll do freelance, which I did for video. And then while I was doing that, in my free time, I watched like your channel, for example, and I watched a lot of anti-MLM content during that time. And I kind of got hooked onto it. I was like, man, I was watching like hours a day while I was like searching for clients and stuff. And I was like, this is so cool. And I'm like, I have a camera. And then but I didn't know what to talk about at first. I was like, well, I don't have like MLM experience firsthand. Like, what am I going to say about it? And then I was on TikTok a lot too at this time, which I'm sure everyone can relate to too. And I saw this woman named Chronically Rah who made this TikTok and basically was saying that she was going to be dying the next day, and to basically like send her money. And I was like, this is so weird. And it just like, it made me feel weird. And I was like, why do I feel so weird about this? Like, I felt sad, but I also was like, something seems off. So I started going through her page, and then I saw like, it was more of she has done this before. Basically like a year before, she had the same kind of video. That one didn't go viral. I know. And that one did. So I was like, I need to say something about this. And so I just like made a YouTube channel that night, and like decided like, okay, I want to make like one video about this woman and how it bothered me. And then that's it. And then people watched it and was like, we need more. And then, so I was like, okay, well, that's cool that people watched it and whatnot. And I was also on Reddit at the time too. So, people on Reddit were coming from talking about her into watching the video, but I got hooked on it. I was like, oh, this is fun. This is cool. It's a good outlet. And I started to like, just go, okay, I'm going to continue doing this for as long as I can.
Well, and it makes sense hearing your background, because I was watching that video the other day because I'm like, I just want to see what her first video was like. And you just seemed so natural already and comfortable on camera that I was like, she has to have done this before. Like, there has to be a story.
Industry plant.
Right. And so that video was wild, and it's interesting that that's how you got into it, because I feel like that kind of launched the other topics that you talk about on your channel, where it's like other people want to know when they're being scammed or when somebody's
Hmm.
being dishonest. And so after that, it was kind of like a jumping off point for you, is what it seems like.
Yeah, definitely. And I at first really stuck to the medical people. And that's
Mhm.
something I'm interested in a lot, is like medical scams. And I don't know necessarily why. I just think it crosses a symbolic line where it's like you can lie about business, being like successful in business. Like that's grimy and gross, and I don't like
Mhm.
that. But it's not nearly as bad as saying you have a debilitating or life-threatening disease and then asking people for money. Like that to
Yeah.
me is just so much worse.
Well, you're pulling on people's
So
heartstrings.
yeah, exactly. And I think because I worked in news, these stories came up a lot, and kids with cancer or people with diseases, and sometimes they turned out to be scams. And I'm like, if the news can't tell the difference, how are you at home supposed to tell the difference? Because they're putting it up on their newscast, like, oh yeah, this is a legitimate story. And then
Mhm.
if you peel back the layers and have the time to look at it, sometimes they're not. And it's important to know the difference when you're giving money and your time and emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw she left a comment on that video saying how she was going to sue you. Did that ever happen?
No, no. And she also emailed me privately. And that's kind of where I got, so that's a whole other story. But basically, I had asked her, she'd emailed me privately and wrote me a whole like essay. And, I read it and I thought, this woman is unstable. She's
Mm,
got some things going on that, is more than just she's lying. She's just a scammer. It seems like she believes a lot of like the delusion. So I was like, am I manipulating her by doing these? Like, am I making a situation that's already bad worse?
mhm.
So after some time, because at one point I was going to interview her on the channel. A lot of people wanted me to, and she had agreed to it. She immediately was like, yes, I will come on. She's like, I knew you were smart. Like she threatened to sue me and go to the FBI. And then when I offered to have her on the show, she was like, oh, well, you're such a smart girl. I knew you would, like pick the right thing. So it was almost like, ooh, this feels wrong because
Mhm.
she's not quite thinking clearly. And I was just like, I need to back off and kind of stop with her specifically. But almost all the medical people I've talked about have messaged me privately and
Oh, wow.
said, yeah, there's one person, I am Marissa, and I did a video about her after Rah Rah, and she messaged me and said, I was a fan of yours from your Rah Rah videos, which to me was so ironic because I was accusing her of doing the same thing that Rah Rah did.
Mhm.
So it was almost like people who scam also know all the other scammers. I don't know. It's very odd. But I also felt like
Yeah.
ethically, these people aren't famous. They have
Mhm.
hundreds of thousands of followers on TikTok, but other than that, they're pretty private figures. So
Mhm.
some of the ethical, boundaries for me were starting to get blurred. So I was like, well, maybe I should start to focus on more forward-facing people.
Yeah, and I feel like that's how it is with TikTok. Like you can grow such a large audience so quickly, but it's
Yeah.
not realistic of how many people would know you in a more mainstream way. It's just so much faster
Mhm.
growing on there. And so then
Yeah.
when you take it to like YouTube or Instagram or whatever, it doesn't
Yeah.
really translate. So that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And so in that transition, you kind of started talking about the Hollises, and I'm so interested in that.
Yeah.
How did that get started?
So, okay, I read Girl Wash Your Face when I was, and I kind of am a self proclaimed former personal development, like groupie, I guess, or
Mhm.
like fangirl. I was all about it. I, read Marie Forleo's Everything is Figure Outable. I watched Tony Robbins videos. I read Tony Robbins books. I watched Gary Vee and told people that they should also do it.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, I was like, all about it. I didn't know that I had like repressed trauma that I wasn't dealing with. But once I started dealing with it, I started to see the light of like, oh shit, like this isn't good for me. It isn't good for anyone really, in my
Mhm.
opinion. And I started to change my mindset. But I knew who Rachel Hollis was. I was aware of her. I think I followed her on Instagram. And then when she came out with, or she got divorced, was when I was reintroduced to her, basically like, oh, I haven't heard about her in a while. I can't believe that she got divorced. That's crazy. And then when Toiletgate happened, I was like, okay, I already have this growing YouTube channel. I think I had probably, I don't know if I had 1,000 subs at the time, but I was like, I need to get this off my chest because it was just, it bothered me so much. And there's the thing about feeling, I just get annoyed when people think that they're better than other people. It really grinds my gears, as Peter Griffin would say. And, I just was like, I'll make it. And I didn't really have any expectations of how the video would do. It was so different than the other content I was doing because it was not medical scams. It was, person being rude on the internet, a guru, but it did really well. And people, I don't know, like the people in the comments really made me feel like, wow, I'm not alone in a weird way, because I'd always felt like, oh, I'm negative. I'm such a negative person. Like people would tell me that. My mother told me that, like, you're so negative all the time. And I'm like, and it was always something I was trying to fight against. That's why I got involved with gurus and learning and spirituality and all that stuff. Cause I was like, I'm a negative person and I need to change. And when I started like being more authentic and going, the reason why I'm negative is because people like this piss me off. And people were like, yeah, me too. I was like, oh my God, like I feel so much better. I'm not alone. And people, and then I found like, I was already watching the MLM stuff, but then I started to watch more of like the guru coverage. And I was like, this is so, I guess, like confirmation bias, but it's so comforting. Like, yeah, I'm finding people who speak the language that I speak. And I didn't feel like I was such a negative loser anymore, to be honest.
No, I get that, because in my circle, like growing up in the church and being involved in that community, Girl Wash Your Face was like everything. It came out, when I was in my early 20s, and like all the young wives were reading it and posting about it. And I'm like, I just don't get it. Is it me, or is this like scammy? Is this not something we should follow? And so when you find those other people who are like, wait, I've been feeling the exact same way, it's like, oh, thank God. Thank goodness it's not just me.
Yeah. It's like at work when like, I don't know if you've worked in a corporate environment, but if you're at work and it's like, you say something about the other coworker, you're like, yeah, do you ever think about that person when they did that? Do you ever think of, and they're like, yeah, I hate when they do that. They're like, oh my God, me too. And it's like, the door opens where like, okay, now we can talk about this behavior that's been bugging me. And my boyfriend's the only one I get to talk to about it. He's sick of me talking about it. So like, oh, thank God I found you. And that's how I felt, like, relief.
Yeah. And it was just like a community of people all understanding that this was not like Rachel and Dave Hollis, what they have done and what they're doing is not okay. And so I think it's good to, definitely good to talk about it and like spread awareness, because there's a lot of people who have been realizing it, especially since the divorce was announced. And that's been real interesting.
That was like the climax of I call it like the Hollis Universe, because I feel like there's so much lore around it. Like if you're in the groups online, like if you're on the Reddit thread, or you like kind of follow, even since Toiletgate on, like it's like a Marvel movie. Like every day there's something to talk about. There's some big, thing that's happened, some scandal, some issues, some, crazy things. It's like, there's not enough to keep up with everything that's going on. And it just interests me so much.
I know it is, because it's like, you could not be online for one day and you'll miss something and be like, wait, that new thing happened. What's going on with this? And it's just, it's never ending with them.
And they're different too. It's funny because they split off, Dave and Rachel, because they were the couple goals, relationship goals, couple that everyone wanted to, emulate apparently. But now they have their separate timelines. Their storylines are separated now. So it's almost like the A plot and the B plot. And then the A plot, Rachel's got something and then she goes quiet. And then Dave's got something and he goes quiet. And then the boyfriends and the girlfriend, it's just like, it's like a reality show about self-help playing out in real time, as they say. It's just, obviously I'm very interested in it, the whole thing.
Oh yeah. And do you think you'll keep covering them for a significant amount of time, or are there other topics that you want to start diving into as well?
100% I want to do other people, other topics, other things. But I don't think I'll ever totally leave unless they change. And I always try to leave space for them to be able to change, because I think as much as I have a problem with their teachings and whatever, they could change and they could come to their senses, or they could make, adjustments, and I would find them more appealing. So I don't want to say like, yes, forever I will always, snark on them, because who knows? Miracles happen every day, right? But the way that the trajectory has gone thus far, I feel like I'll be covering them for a while longer, at least. My prediction for the future for the Hollises is that Rachel and her boyfriend will eventually break up, and that will be a saga. And Dave and Heidi will have either get married or they will also break up, and that will be its own saga. So I'm kind of waiting for those two things to unfold over time.
Yeah, things definitely aren't settled with them. Like there's still there's going to be something that pops up that's just like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine. I know people are kind of speculating, like, did they break up? Are they still together as far as Dave and Heidi go? And I just feel like it's coming. Like something, it has to be, especially with Dave going into treatment and all of that. I don't see it being smooth for them.
Yeah, I think if I was their PR person, which I'm not, but if I was, I would say the best thing that they could both do is break up. So Rachel and Dave break up from who they're with right now, and then get back together. I think that would be the only way they could recover
from a PR standpoint. Okay.
Yeah, because I think, well, first of all, I think that they are meant to be together too, because they do the same things and I feel like they communicate to each other via their own platforms.
Oh yeah.
But like, oh, I'm running a marathon. No, I'm running a marathon. No, I'm going to run it with no training. Well, I'm going to do, it's like, oh my God, like to me, it seems like obvious, like they're talking to each other, but, it makes sense, because it's like the PR spin could be like, well, we lost ourselves. Like all the scandals would be swept away. Like, okay, well, we weren't finding we were not in our truest form of loving each other. That's why we had all these issues. Now we're back together. We'll teach you how to get back with your ex. And then cue the books and movie deals and such.
I mean, from a PR perspective, I feel like that could work. From an actual healthy relationship perspective, I'm like,
yeah, not so much. Yeah, I agree. I mean, health wise, they got a lot to work on, like healthy relationships wise. Because, at the end of the day, and this is something I talk about and harp on a lot on my channel, I feel like, is the kids. There's 8 children involved in Heidi's life and Dave and all, all together. There's like 8 children that are kind of suffering the consequences of what their parents do.
Yeah.
And, that's where I kind of have a problem. It's like, at the end of the day, they're always like, oh, I'm transforming. I'm a new page, new chapter, blank slate. It's like, not really. You got, 4 kids who are under the age of, 18. It's like, they don't get a blank slate. They have to just keep living and like dealing with it. So it's like, it's just, I feel for them the most.
Oh yeah. Especially with both their parents hopping into new relationships so quickly. And it seems like that's like their main focus. I feel so bad for those kids, because it's your parents who you're used to them being together, and now they're not. And now there's other adults coming into the home who you are expected to like treat as, oh, mom and dad's new boyfriend, potential new step parent. Like that's got to be so stressful for those kids.
That's a lot to take, especially with your life being broadcast to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hope they're all like getting therapy of some kind or getting support at the very least, because I think any child, whether they're privileged or well-adjusted or smart or anything, are going to have issues dealing with all the stuff they've had to deal with. Even moving, they moved from a different state, talking about Rachel and Dave and their kids, that alone is a whole, thing to kind of get through. And, their youngest is adopted. Like that's a whole other thing that is not just simple, like, oh, she was too young to remember. It's like, yeah, but there's layers involved in it. So I just hope that they stay strong, get into some sort of support system, in the future or now, and are okay through it all. That's my hope.
Absolutely. So I want to ask you a question about, obviously I know when you kind of got reinterested in the Hollises, but when did you kind of stop like buying into the Gary Vee, the Tony Robbins, stuff like that? Because I know you mentioned hiring a life coach in one of your videos. Did that have anything to do with it?
Yes. Yes. So kind of like I said, it was a combination of several things. So I started with the life coach. I went to a group, which is never a good idea. Now I know that. I went to a group yoga / life coaching class. And basically it was 6 weeks. Yeah. And I was kind of like, I wasn't woo-woo ever really, but I was open to it. And I guess that's, how it happens. If you're just a little bit open, like they can take it to the extreme.
Oh yeah.
But I went, it was like 1 hour of yoga and 1 hour of group coaching. So like 5 women and myself would go do yoga. And then we would talk about, what happened that week, what we're dealing with. And then we might learn a topic like how to journal, how to meditate. And then it kind of went into like what these crystals do, which I was never into it even then, but I would listen and think, oh, this is pretty interesting. Anyway, so one of the life coach who led the part of the class of the group coaching, her and I really hit it off, and I liked her, and she was a former therapist, and I have a lot of respect for therapy. I always have. I've always thought, people who become either psychologists or therapists, like I've always just held them to like a higher standard, I guess. And even though she had left the industry and become a life coach, I still felt like, well, she went through the schooling. That's hard. She's got the background. She went to a university. I was like, okay, I like her. And then, so I met her there. And then over time, I do videography. So she's like, I need some videos for my business. And I was like, okay. So she's like, how about a trade? Like, well, I'll trade life coaching for your video production. And I was like, great. Oh, wow. So for me, I'm like, I don't have to pay for this. Even though I'm paying with my time, I was like, right. Oh, perfect. Because sessions were like, I think for 5 sessions, it was like $350. So like not the work. It wasn't like 10,000 like some of these gurus are, but enough that it's like, I would have to budget that in my month because, you're doing them once a week or more. But anyway, so I started to hang out with her and we would shoot videos together, and I would also go and talk to her about my issues. And I didn't know at the time that life coaches aren't supposed to be therapists. They're supposed to help you with like organizing your closet, like stuff like that. Right. Or like how to set a goal. But I'm telling her about like my childhood trauma, and like I'm telling her about dreams I've had, and like actual dreams, not like oh, my goal was to become this. It was like, no, I had a dream last night where I was running in the field, like stuff like that. And some of the advice she was giving was okay, and some of it was not, now looking back. But at the time I just felt like she was the only person I could talk to about this stuff because she's a trained professional, and it became almost like I relied on her too much to hold all of this emotional space for me. And so over time, it was like the time I met her to the time I left was a year about. But in between that time was the pandemic, and like all this stuff was coming up. So through that, I was going to her all the time, talking to her about stuff. And then also slowly she started to become, we can't trust the government. You know that, right? I was like, wait, what? She's like, oh, like vaccines are what cause autism. I'm like, wait, what? Oh, okay. And then one day she said, I think one day she like made this announcement to me and she had a bunch of us come to her house, all her clients, which is odd too, that you would meet the other clients. Yeah. But we all came to her house for like this session, and she's like, I just want to announce that I'm a psychic, and I'm going to be like leaning into this gift. And I was like, fuck, like, I was just like, no, I've told this woman all of my secrets and like now she's telling me that she's psychic, and like, she's like, oh, you and me, like me specifically. She's like, you are my sister in a past life. And I'm just like, I gotta go. And I just was like, okay, I actually have to go. And I really like left, and I never saw her again. Like that night, like I was just like, I can't do
Oh
this.
my gosh.
And so that was really the catalyst for me, that I was like, I trusted this woman so deeply. I was like,
Yeah.
who else am I trusting? Like, who else am I looking at for this stuff? And then, so once I got out of kind of that group, I went into traditional therapy, like, has a running license, like need an office type of thing.
Is
And
qualified to do the job.
qualified, yes, like, legally has certain things. Oh, sure. And so once I started doing that, it took a little time, but once I started to go and talk to her about, my issues and things that were happening, I started to see the light on my own, basically, like, whoa, like, okay, I was really desperate for like connection. And why is that? Okay, well, this and this. And then it all made sense. And I started to go, yeah, this is not good. And that was right around the time where I was, starting to like freelance and think about doing the YouTube and stuff. So it all kind of came at one time.
Yeah.
And yeah, but the life coach was definitely the catalyst for like me dropping it all, because I feel like it's a slippery slope. It was for me. I got in slow. And then all of a sudden by the end of it, I'm like, oh, I'm talking to a psychic every day. Like, and I didn't mean to start there, but it gets there sometimes. And that's why I don't want anyone to go through what I went through. At least have the knowledge beforehand to make the decision in advance, like if that's what your thing is or not. And for me, it was never my thing, but yet I'm now in this thing I didn't mean to be in, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I feel like a lot of times people in that industry are very slick. And like you said, it's very subtle, where you listen to like one talk and you're like, oh, like they have a positive attitude, I want to listen to more of that. And then before you know it, you're paying, like, you're maxing out a credit card to go to UPW and get screamed at for 12 hours a day. And you're like, thank you, Tony.
Thank you. I owe you my life.
Thank you so much for yelling at me. It's
Tony.
It's hard because for me, I'm like, I love personal development. I love all of that stuff, but you have to be very discerning with who you listen to, because I feel like so many of them just don't give you anything tangible. It's all very just broad, general, not accessible for a good majority of people. And that's where it gets kind of harmful, because you're spending money, but also the stuff they're saying is probably not going to work for you depending on your situation or your circumstance.
Yes, I 100% agree. And I have a story about Jen Sincero. Do you know who that is?
I do. Yeah. Okay. Let me hear it.
So I never met her, but I read her books on recommendation from the life coach. And it was the one about, I read You Are a Badass and I liked it. And then I read You Are a Badass with Money. And so I was so like, I don't know what the word is, but it's like when you're so deep into it, you're like, yeah, like I will do anything to prove to myself that this is real. And so I read the book, and the whole purpose of that book is like, just spend money and it'll come back to you. Like very much like the evangelical church, like tithe and it'll come back to you tenfold. That's like a similar comparison. And so I was like, okay. So I went and hired a video coach too. So a guy who like inspires you to like run your video production business. Because I was like, I already have a life coach. What's the difference of adding another coach for a business coach? And that's also how it happens. Like you have one, you might as well have 12. Like, why not? So it was $100 a month. And this guy, literally all I would do, he had like Voxer, which is like this app for audio messages. And I would say, hey, like I have this client, I don't know what to charge. What do you think I should do? He's like, he'd respond and say like, hey girlfriend, you're a rock star. Whatever you want to charge will be the right price. Okay, bye. And I was like, oh, that's not helpful. But it took me like 4 months to like drop it, because I'm listening to Jen Sincero say, just trust it. I'm putting $100 into this coach. I'm going to get the money back. And then I took his advice one time. I said, what should I ask? He's like, what's an amazing number that scares you? I'm like, $4,000. He's like, charge that. I'm like, okay. So I a potential client to do a video for, I said, oh, $4,000. They're like, what? Are you insane? I was like, oh, so, like, is that too much? And they're like, we're so sorry. You were out of our budget. Like, we can't work with you. We were thinking you were going to come in way lower. And I was newly in business, like my first month or so. And I'm asking for this like ridiculous price because this guy told me, and Jen Sincero told me, like, just do it and it'll happen for you. And I literally have never worked with that client again. They like never wanted to work with me again. And I was like, cool. I just like burned a bridge for no reason. So that's my Jen Sincero story, that I burned a bridge and lost like $400 in addition to potential clients.
Yeah.
I read that stupid book.
I read both of those books in like 2019. And at that time I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so genius. I love this. Like you buy in because it sounds good. And you're like, oh, well, it worked for you. So let me do it. But that reminds me, like right around that time, I was following another, like kind of like manifestation guru. And so like I was all into like money. How am I going to get so rich? Like all this money, this is what I need because it'll give me freedom. And one girl said, don't have an emergency fund because you're asking for something bad to happen to you. And that's when I was like, oh no, like I'm gonna keep my emergency fund, because she's like, just spend it like you're already rich. Don't have an emergency fund. And I was like,
Lord,
no, like I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna keep that money. Thank you though.
Yeah. My financial advisor would disagree with you on that, woman.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, that's that's like textbook secret methodology. Like if you believe, that's what they think about disease. Like if you are afraid of getting a disease, like you'll get the disease 100%. It's like, I'm afraid of every disease and I've not gotten one of them, you know? So I think that method is bullshit, you know?
Yeah. Like something's off.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, with people that give advice like that, I always want to know what their parents do. And like Jen Sincero, for example, her dad is like a successful doctor. So even if she really fucked up, and I'm sorry for cursing, I don't know if I'm allowed to curse.
No, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. If she really fucked up and like just was destitute, she could go, Daddy, do you mind if I grab a couple grand? Because I'm going to be homeless otherwise. But for someone like myself, it's like, I don't have that social, and millions of other people in the world don't have the social security net of the government or their parents or their significant other. If you make a $3,000 mistake, you could be homeless, or you could lose your home or lose your car or whatever. The stakes are so much higher for so many people. Saying like, oh, don't have an emergency fund when your parents own a yacht and a resort and whatever. It's like, that's easy for you to say because that's your emergency fund.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they don't have the extra helping hands from friends and family.
You know, I feel like it's either that, like they have rich parents that they can fall back on, or they become a coach and they charge people money to learn how to be rich. And like, that's how they get rich, is what I've noticed so often in the like personal development sphere, is like, I'll teach you how to be successful, but they weren't successful until they became coaches. And when I recognized that, that's when I had my moment of kind of just like, yeah. It's like little things building on top of each other until you're just like, okay, so none of you guys are actually helping people, right? You're just telling them, don't make excuses, don't be scared. You're not rich because you're too afraid. It's like,
yeah. And the thing is, like, a lot of these people, especially a lot of the women that do like MLMs and do these coaching things, they have solid sales skills. I'm like, if you were in the pharmaceutical industry or like even, you know, like a higher value thing, like I don't know, like a turbine or something, like there's salespeople that sell these giant products. Like you could be actual millionaires and work for a company and get healthcare and stuff. You have the skills, you have like the people, you know, talking skill. Like, why don't you utilize that in a better industry than MLM?
That's a whole other like can of worms. MLM thing. It's just nuts.
Yes.
So,
yeah, I agree.
So I wanted to ask you, where do you see your channel going over the next few years? And what do you hope people really get out of it?
I have no idea where the channel is going to go. I mean, I hope it continues to grow and that people continue to find it entertaining and helpful in some way. Because if it's not, then what's the point? If people aren't going to watch it, or people are going to watch it and find it to be boring or, not helpful in any way, it's like, well, then I can go and try to make money a different way or try to have a different career that's more useful. But I would like to do more spirituality debunking. I think that's something I'm interested in, and I think I'm ready to start tackling, because I think there's a lot of, it's a slippery slope again, where people, for example, this guy named the medical medium, he claims that he can just look at you and tell you what's wrong with you medically. And it bothers me so much, because that comes from a spiritual idea that some people are just intuitive, or some people are just gifted more highly than others. And I think that's such a dangerous thing to believe, that, some people on earth just have, more like godly, like characteristics. So I want to start talking about more of those, the little things that we allow ourselves to believe that could end up, hurting us down the road, and start to like break some of those things down. And even people with well-meaning, with a lot of people have well-meaning desires or aspirations. They have a channel about wellness or something, but then they prop up these people who, have no qualifications, who charge thousands and thousands of dollars or make claims that are completely outrageous. I want to start talking about those people too, in addition to personal development people, which I think are, problematic, but kind of combine the beginning and the middle of my channel, where it's like the medical people, which somehow just like really bothered me, and then the selling of the information and the cures, because it's like, we've been here before. People think like, oh, this is all new. It's like, there's been snake oil salesmen for years. They just have an Instagram now. And it's like, we need to, as much as people hate, the followers and the devotees hate you, there needs to be another voice to say, look, like, not all of us believe this bullshit. Like, there's another way to think about it, that this guy is scamming you, And so, I hope to dive into that a little bit more. And I just hope to continue like the production value as well. Like, I really love video and producing video. So, trying to keep it fresh and fun, and make these topics that suck kind of like part of the entertainment experience, I guess, if that makes sense. Like, we can laugh and have jokes, but also learn like a serious lesson. And that's kind of my shtick, I guess.
Spread awareness, but don't make it all doomsday. Like, have fun doing it.
Exactly. Yeah, we can, make jokes and do voices and, kind of have inside jokes and things that the community understands. But also, they can take something with them and go, I'm glad that I'm not the only one, or my suspicions about this thing, this person on the internet also has even greater suspicions. So I'm glad that I'm not alone on that. And that's what I hope.
Yeah, and you're looking into Louise Hay right now, aren't you? If I'm remembering correctly.
Yes, I think I have it. Let me see. My favorite book. It took me like 2 days to get through, and it was quite the page turner. I know it's like backwards, but I have my highlighted stuff on here. This is an unhinged book. Let me just say right off the bat, if you read this book, you will learn the ramblings of an insane person. And I don't say that lightly. I really believe like she was mentally insane when she wrote this book.
Oh my gosh.
Have you heard any of the quotes? I can find a random quote for you and prove well, basically, okay. I can see here. It's like a chart. This is all the physical ailments that people have, and her version of what causes it. Okay. You want to hear one?
Yeah.
I'll do a serious one. What causes multiple sclerosis? Okay. Pretty serious disorder. It's caused by mental hard-heartedness, iron will, inflexibility, and fear. So you can just solve that by saying this little mantra, and then you'll be healed of your multiple sclerosis.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
It's things like that. Also, she says in here that children with that need glasses, like seeing glasses, they just have a bad family life, and they're trying to not see what's going on in their family. So that's the reason that children have glasses.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's Louise Hay.
Wow.
It's quite an interesting journey I'm on right now with her.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of Dianetics. I don't know if you have read too much into
Scientology.
Yeah. So I
haven't.
read the abridged version of Dianetics because I was like, I was getting into like Leah Remini and hearing her story, and I'm like, I just got to know, like, what is the appeal of this book, and like L. Ron Hubbard. And there's an entire section about how if a woman is pregnant and she's like constipated, and she'll say, oh, this terrible baby is causing me to be constipated, and then the baby will come out and be like really sick because the mom spoke negativity into the child. And so I'm like, that's kind of what it reminds me of like, it's your human emotions that are causing you to be sick, or that are causing multiple sclerosis. It's just like,
yes. Yeah, that seems to be a running theme within this community of spiritual. It's like it's bleeding into personal development now. It's like you are what you think.
Right.
Like, yes, to a point. Like, of course, I believe that if you have positive thoughts, you most likely will be a more positive person.
Yeah,
perhaps. But I also feel like once I get the negative stuff off my chest and I express it, I feel positive too. And I feel longer term positivity when I just get it out there and go, oh my God, or vent to a friend or something. Yes, I'm being negative. I'm putting it out in the universe. But right after, I'm like, oh, thanks for that. And I leave and I have a better day. So that's all obviously my personal anecdote, but I mean, it works for me. So how can it be a universal law that anytime you speak negativity, you're always going to have some horrible, like the amount of negativity I feel like I express on a daily basis, I would have, like I said, every disorder, every disease, I would be bedbound by now.
Oh my gosh.
So I must be the exception to the rule of the universe. I don't know.
Well, I just think it's not healthy in general to keep like negative emotions in, because you're just suppressing it and not letting yourself be like, hey, I just need to vent for a minute, or hey, I'm feeling really frustrated. Let me get it out. Because then once you get it out, you're like, okay, I just needed to say that. I needed to get it off my chest. I feel better.
And sometimes it comes from a place of, you need to look at this. Like, why am I, and it's like looking at it and going, why am I upset by Rachel's TikTok? Like Rachel Hollis is posting, why does it bother me? It's like, well, it bothers me. And I think about it because, this, and this. And it's like, oh, I don't want to ever treat someone who comes and cleans my house as the toilet cleaner. Like, that's something I've learned now, and I don't need to replicate in my life. So how it actually is a positive. But in her world, or in, this personal development world, even criticizing her is me being negative, and that's going to hurt me. And I'm just a hurt, sad person. It's like, maybe, but maybe not,
maybe, maybe I'm trying to spread awareness on things that are not okay, so we can all kind of have a productive conversation, as opposed to just glossing over things that are unjust.
Yeah. And that like brings another point too, is like, I don't know if you watched or listened to the Skinny Confidential Rachel Hollis apology, quote unquote apology, or her begrudgingly telling people about what cancel culture means to her. I think, with that, it bothered me even more about Rachel specifically, and it made me angry. And I realized why. It's because she knows better, and she's choosing to paint this picture of, I have no idea. I didn't know anything. I post and I just walk away off a cliff. I don't look at my social posts. I disappear into the wind. Like, the fact that she's not a stupid person, but she's portraying herself this way bothers me so much. Because it's like, it's okay to be like, I made a mistake. I was being negative and wrong, and I messed up, and I'm going to work on it. As opposed to trying to keep this perspective of like, I've always been positive. I will never not be positive. Anything I've done that hurts you is your fault and your problem. It's like, it bothers me so much.
I know. I think she portrays herself that way to try and get out of taking accountability, but it doesn't work. Like, we've seen what Rachel does. We know her capabilities. We know that, like, yes, Dave provided her funding and like the opportunity to grow a business, but she still grew that business. Like, she is not stupid. And so when you see her like playing dumb, it's even more frustrating because it's like, I know that you know better. I know you do.
Yeah. And the reason I know she knows better, specifically about the TikTok, is because if she truly knew, she didn't know, if she truly had no idea, she would have no problem calling her housekeeper a toilet cleaner again. And she would say, what? I called her a toilet cleaner. What's the problem with that? And she would double down. But instead she goes, I just said my sweet friend Tammy comes over. I never said anything. I don't even know why people are mad. It's like, you know exactly why you're mad, why people are mad, because you haven't repeated exactly what you said. So that's where it's like, you do know because of the way you're acting.
Yeah. And so she reframed the TikTok too, like the tone of the TikTok. It was like, well, I'm not relatable and I don't want to be relatable. I want to be exceptional. When you know that was not the tone that you did that TikTok in, Rachel.
I actually pulled up your video during a stream when we were talking about her apology thing, and we watched it, and there was like several, because there was a woman who was depressed and that had asked a question, but it was not in any sort of, not even close in the timeline to when she brings up the toilet thing. And so like to connect the two is like a PR stunt if I've ever seen it. And she's relying on people not going the extra mile and watching the video that's still on her Instagram,
still there,
to confirm it, which is crazy. I couldn't believe it. Someone's like, it's right here. Cause I looked at your video because I was like, oh, she must have deleted it by now. So I was watching yours. And then someone's like, oh no, the raw is here. I was like, is she insane? Like, I mean, I don't know. I'm glad she didn't delete it because it was helpful to see that it wasn't true, but maybe she thought, this is how, like, I always try to think like 6 steps ahead of what they're thinking. Like maybe she thought that because she left it there, that no one would actually spend the time to watch it, such that she would prove her point. Like, look, I didn't delete it. I got nothing to hide. But then you watch it, you're like, wait, this has nothing. Those two things were 7 minutes apart. It has nothing to do with anything.
And that's the thing, is I thought she had deleted it. Like when we did the Skinny Confidential and I was listening to it, I'm like, man, I wish that video was still up so I could confirm, because I remember like somebody saying that they were depressed and having trouble, but I don't think that, like, I'm like, even though I knew that that wasn't what happened, I'm like, well, hey, maybe I'm remembering wrong. And then I went back and looked, boom, it's there. And I'm like, she's just counting on people to not take 15 minutes to watch this.
Yeah.
And
a lot of people won't.
Yeah.
A lot of people won't.
I'm sure they wouldn't.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, and that way she's smart too. That's a smart, tactic to take and go, okay, well, I could take my chances and delete it and then have to explain why I deleted it, or leave it up and then 90% of the people won't look and they'll buy my, my next book anyways. So, why not?
I'm just stunned she didn't delete it like right when it happened. Because at this point, she can't delete it without causing a controversy. But it's like she was planning on doing a live, like a webinar for people who couldn't go to Rise. And she was promoting it in that Instagram video. And that event got canceled because I was going to do a video about it. And so I signed up to go. And then I got an email that they were like rescheduling until further notice. And so I'm like, okay, you had such this like fallout from this video, and yet you chose to leave it up. And I don't know
the mindset. Well, in her mind, she got canceled because she got divorced, because everyone knows divorce is so uncommon, and that's the reason, not anything else. Okay.
It couldn't be anything. It's just because she got divorced. That's it.
Yeah, definitely. We made her the character that we wanted her to be.
Gosh.
Yeah, that whole thing was bothersome, and it made me angry. It did. And I was like, I need to take a break and then make a video, because I don't want to come across as like too angry, because I feel like I'm very familiar with the story and all the intricacies of it. So when something like that happens, I'm just like, come on, because in a weird way, this is going to sound really weird, but in a weird way, I root for her, because she's kind of like a woman who's had troubles and like in her childhood, and then and I think I've gone astray believing in the spirituality and wanting to be like the successful person and believing in all these gurus, because it kind of makes you like feel like you're better than everyone else. Like I spend 3 hours a day on personal development. I hope I feel better than someone who doesn't, I guess. Yeah. And that was my mindset. Like, I'm going to be better than everyone else eventually when I figure this out. And I think that's how she felt. And she did accomplish something. But I also hold out hope too for her that like, look, like we're all just trying to figure this shit out. No one knows what the right thing to do for other people is. And just admit that, and then give your own story, your own testimony, and leave it at that. Not have to make it a life lesson for everyone else on the earth to take. I don't think she's going to get there. I really don't. But like this, I'm like, come on, you could have like done something with this moment. You could have apologized correctly. You chose not to. Why?
It's like, you're so close. You're so close to like crossing that threshold to where you can regain some of your, I don't know, like good reputation, or you can make a comeback. But she won't do it. And that's how I feel with Dave too. Like when he left and he was entering treatment, I'm like, we're so close, bud. Like you're on the way. And then he comes out, and I don't know if you saw the interview he did with like the facilitator of the treatment center. And it's just like, oh, okay. So we're not really taking it seriously. Okay. It's just a disappointment because they're right there. They're on the edge. They won't cross.
I agree. I know. And I felt like, Dave really bungled the opportunity he had at the beginning when they got divorced, because I think he made a strategic move when he said Rachel was the one who wanted to get divorced and came out with that, because people were like, oh my God, like poor guy, and then he started to go like, I'm on this journey of finding myself and after divorce, and he could have like capitalized on that. I don't know what his deal is. I don't know exactly what the downfall was, but he just couldn't get out of his own way, as you would say, and become like an actual help to people. Like take the year, go and learn, do the therapy, do all that stuff, and come back in a year and then present the findings. But I feel like, I don't know, there was such a rush to like, I'm a teacher now. I was divorced for 1 month. It's like, come on, man.
I think part of the issue is like, this isn't his world. Like his world is in corporate America, and that's where he's competent and that's where he would thrive. And now that he's left and he's, he did it to be part of the Hollis company, and now they've gotten divorced, he doesn't really want to go back. He's like, well, I have to do this now because that's what I quit to do. And he just doesn't have the, I don't know, foresight to be like, let me not show all my mess, and just like either let me put on a front and, be successful that way, or let me actually get it together and try and help people. He's just kind of, I don't know. It's like he's flailing in the water, trying to get it figured out.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. And I feel for both him and Heidi on a human level. Like, it sucks to be broken up with, especially publicly like that. Oh yeah. And especially when you have been a relationship expert, like that's like the ultimate like fail, like taking a big L in your life. And Heidi too, like being openly not wanting to divorce her husband and like almost publicly being forced to acknowledge like, oh, we're divorced and I didn't want to. Like that sucks. Oh yeah. But go do something else for a little bit, recover from all that, and stop saying, because I always feel like their life's a mess. But the fact that they still think they're better than me makes me feel like shit. It's like their like horrible mess of a life is like, well, at least I'm still me and not you, viewer at home. It's like, yikes. What do you think of me? Like, just because we don't live in a mansion and travel on Southwest or whatever every other day to see each other, like that, I'm supposed to feel bad? Like, whatever.
The kicker is they all could have taken that time off. Like they all have enough money that they could have taken the time to just chill out for a little bit and then come back when they're more together. And so they're making us watch all of this.
It just shows like priority one in all of their lives is them. Because even in a relationship, like, getting together with someone after a marriage falls apart, getting with someone immediately is not most likely the most healthy thing. And how do you really know you've recovered and come over this? Like, you want to be the best partner you can for that new person. You need to take time for yourself to like make sure you're okay. So, but you don't want to be lonely, so I'll just get with them anyways. It's like, that's selfish to me, And then same thing, like, okay, I want to make sure like the advice I'm giving is solid advice. I want to test it. I want to make sure that it has legs and longevity. before I give it to my audience who I care deeply about, and they claim to all love us and like, oh, I love you guys and you're my most special friends and buy my book, you know. But then they don't take the time to even like make sure it works in their own life, but they're just willing to still sell it to you because they don't care about us. That's the thing. They look at us as viewers and not creators of the content and go, whatever I tell them will be good enough for them because I don't really care. That's how I take it.
Well, because they don't have to see like the impacts that their advice has on the lives of their audience. They can just throw something out there and be like, this is going to change your life. Do it. And then maybe one person has a positive reaction and they say it and they're like, see, it worked for them. See, this person loved it.
That statistically proves that I am almighty.
I give the best advice and I'm the best at all of this and everyone should listen.
Yeah. And that's the funniest, most ironic part too. Is like, they'll all say, well, if I change one life, then this work is worth it. It's like, okay, great. But why are you screaming at us to buy your book for $18 and how stupid we all are that we haven't bought it yet and that you don't want anyone to follow you anymore because they don't buy it. It's like one person, you had 20 people per city show up at your event. That's 20 lives that you've changed allegedly. Like, that you should be ecstatic, not like in a psychosis, you know, like screaming on the internet. I don't know.
Screaming on the patio of peace. Don't yell, Dave.
Don't. I have all the sound bites. I wonder if it plays here. Here's my patio of peace sound bite. Hold on. Do you hear it? Oh, dang. I have a soundtrack where I can play all his lines.
Oh my gosh.
On a different day.
I hear it in my head all the time. Don't yell at these people, Dave. And then, but
also, oh yeah, I know. That's my favorite one.
I love that. I said that last night. I don't know what I was talking to my husband about something, and I was like, "Oh, but also," and I like laughed, and he just like breezed by it because he didn't know what I was referring to, and I'm just like, "Well,
like what?
I think I'm funny."
My friends on the internet would laugh hysterically.
You don't know them, but my friends would like it.
Yeah.
Get all defensive.
Yeah. You know, you're a hater and you don't support me. Yeah.
I'm going to make you give me a 3% bracelet.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh.
We should have known then. We should have known that that was a toxic relationship back then. We were all sleeping.
Right. Or like what was it? Girl, stop apologizing. When it was like, I broke up with him and then he showed me he cared. I'm like, red flag. That's it. That's when we should have known. That's when people should have been like, oh, this is not the relationship to look up to.
Yeah. The lesson is just wait and hope. Like, okay. Yeah. Lower your standards.
Let your partner tell you that you're immature for acting your age. Let your partner just not be nice to you, and it'll all work out if you just wait and like maybe threaten to leave. We'll see.
Yeah. And especially if they're making good money, you know, weigh your options and stick it out because you got to start that business, babe.
Gosh, her whole story. I'm like, I could talk about it forever, but
oh, I know. Same. Sorry.
No, you're good. I'm like, I don't want to keep you too long. So one of the last questions I just want to ask is, what are some of the hobbies or things you enjoy doing off of YouTube? Give us a little personal insight.
Yes. So I'm glad that I have hobbies because I didn't used to. When I did personal development stuff and I believed in it, I didn't have a hobby. And I didn't think that was a problem because I'm like, oh, well, like I'm so focused on my career growth, having a hobby. Like Gary Vee literally says in one of his talks, like, if you want to join the tennis club, if you want to play golf every weekend, like you deserve to suck or something like that. Like, you know, like you shouldn't have hobbies outside of doing your work and hustling all the time. So I very much did not have hobbies until like 2 years ago. But now I boulder. That's one thing I've been doing a lot of at the bouldering gym. So like rock climbing without the harness. So it's more free flowing. You just climb up.
Free climbing?
Like 10 feet. Yeah, basically. And it's really cool. I loved it. And I was not expecting to like it as much as I do. I went for the first time like a little less than a year ago. But yeah, we go twice a week. I go to the bouldering gym. See,
Twice a
hobby
week.
more. But also, and so that's been the big hobby lately. And then I just got my motorcycles license this weekend, just passed. That's why I was super busy this week and missed a little bit of the Hollis action, because I did a 2-day class where you learn, well, you do an online portion and then you do 2 days in person. And it was really hard. It was very difficult to pass. I got, so you get demerits like for every issue that you have or every problem you have on the evaluation. And I got 15 demerits. And if you got 16, you did not pass. So I, by the skin of my teeth, passed. And my fiance brought this over so I could show you during this portion.
Ooh!
I got my helmet, my motorcycle's helmet. It's brand new, as you can see, because it's got the stuff still on it. But we're gonna go practice motorcycling.
That's so fun. So do you guys both have your own motorcycles, or are you like purchasing them still?
We're gonna buy one first, because originally I was gonna buy a car because we share a car now, and I was gonna buy one, and I was looking for a while, and they're so expensive right now. It's like the worst time to buy a car like in history. And so I was like, I don't know if I want to buy it right now. I want to wait. And then he's like, well, I've always wanted to try motorcycling. And I was like, oh, okay. And then we were talking, and I was like, I'll do it too, so I can learn. Like, why not? You know, I have nothing to do that weekend. And so we did it together as a couple, and I really enjoyed it too, but it's very hard for me. I did not take to it like immediately, naturally. I had to really kind of like practice while we were there and do the clutch. Like there's like, you know, like different things you got to learn. And
well,
so I'm excited to keep learning.
That's fun. My husband has his motorcycle license. And so my father-in-law was like, oh, we'll get you in. And I'm like, no, like I'll just ride on the back. I'm good. Like the motorcycles are big. They're heavy. I'm short. Like I'll just ride on the back because I'm good.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's good to know. I always think like, and this is probably not a good thought to have, but I always think like, well, if I was kidnapped and the only option was like a motorcycle, like I would hope that I would know how to ride it to escape. So I'll talk myself into stuff like that. Or like I drove a stick shift car, and I was like, I need to learn stick shift because what if I'm kidnapped? And like everything comes back to what if I'm kidnapped, and like learning how to load a gun correctly, like all these things that I don't necessarily want to do. I'm like, I should do it though, just in case. So that's
survival skills.
Like I need to know how to light a fire, which I don't, but it's on my list of things to learn.
Oh my gosh. Do you remember like, 5 or 6 years ago when that video was going around of how to break zip ties that are on your wrist and you hit it on your hip? I tried to do that, and it literally just like wrecked my wrist. Ooh. I could not break it, and I had Rick cut it off because I was like, I can't do it. I need you to cut these.
Oh my god!
You can see like the imprints. Ooh. And so if I ever got kidnapped, my like approach is like, I'm just gonna befriend them until they trust me enough to like escape, because I don't have the skills.
Emotional manipulation always works.
That's my thought. I'm like, I think I could do it. I watch enough of the Hollises. I could do it.
Yeah. Like, did you know that, you know, you could just change your mindset right now? Like from kidnapping mindset to like letting me go mindset?
Yeah. You could just like stop being a criminal, and like you would feel better, because that's really negative. So
yeah, super negative.
If you wanted a better life, you wouldn't be a criminal.
You can coach other criminals. Don't even do the criminal work anymore. Just like coach other ones. Yeah.
Just start charging them, and then you can teach them how to stop being kidnappers.
Exactly. I love it. Yeah, that's the best. That's the best mindset. You're a mindset coach. You already are one.
I mean, I'm going to put out an evergreen class pretty soon.
Perfect.
I gotta get my funnel set up first.
Oh my God, I know. There's parts because I run a business too with the video production, and I'm like, should I do funnels? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't think so. It's like, that's pretty, I don't know. I need to find a way that's not like super scammy too.
Right.
Advertise.
I'm like, there's ways to do it and you're like teaching a valuable skill. So
yeah,
it's like Jenna Kutcher has her evergreen course where it's like what kind of what's your secret sauce of your business? And I like didn't have a business at the time, but I was like, I'll take it. And then you get 20 emails a day and you get to go to a live webinar where you can ask questions, but there's like 16 of them a day. And I'm like, oh, that's not live.
I can ask my question that they'll email you the response to later with a link to buying something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So last question I have for you is, what is some goal that you're working on right now or that you want to work on in the future that you're hoping to accomplish?
Good question. I want to learn how to Okay, I'll say one that's kind of like less serious. I want to learn how to curl my hair correctly and style my hair, because I just got an ombre you can't barely tell in this lighting and in this, I did like barely brush it today, but I got an ombre for the first time, a balayage style thing. And in the salon, she did it perfect. Like it looked so good. And then I come home the next day, I'm like, what happened? So I've been watching tutorials and I want to learn how to curl it the way she did. And then I also need to learn how to do my makeup again, because I've been makeup free for like 2 years basically. And I love being makeup free, but I learned how to do my makeup on YouTube back in like 2012 and things have changed since then. So I need to go back and learn how to do my hair and my makeup basically and have a set style, so I don't feel like I'm starting like, reinventing the wheel every time I have to go somewhere.
Well, I feel like it's even harder right now because like we've been in pandemic mode for like 2 years. So you're like, well, what am I going to do my makeup for? And staying at home, or what am I going to do my hair for? And then you have something that you have to go to and you're like, hold on, wait a second.
I know. I'm like, I give myself like a 5-minute get ready time. I'm like, wait, I have to actually like shower and do my hair and make. It's like, I need a refresher course. Do you offer refreshing courses, mindset and makeup classes?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not qualified, but like you can pay me extra and I'll figure it out.
Yeah. Okay. Qualifications, smallifications. That's what I say.
We don't need them. I'm like, this is what works for me, so obviously it'll work for you, right?
Exactly. Yeah. You're living proof.
100%. Okay, so I lied. One last question. Okay. Where can people find you, and anything else you want to plug?
Sure. I'll do the 3 main ones. So obviously YouTube is my home base. So Keya's World. So like a key, Keyas, not like Kia the car, Keya's World on YouTube. And then on Instagram, it's Keya's World YT. I spend a lot of time there and share a lot of cringy things I find that other people post on Instagram. So if you like to make fun of silly things, then you'll like it. And then on Thursdays, another creator and I, Camelia, who lives in Romania and talks about a lot of the same topics that both you and I talk about, personal development and scams, MLMs, that sort of thing. We do a live show on Thursday called Cringe Fluencers. So like influencer, but cringe instead in the beginning. And we talk about a lot of different people, and it's very laid back and casual. And we have kind of our 2 perspectives are similar in a lot of ways, but we also have some differences. So it's nice to see like the nuance talking about these things. So that's at noon Eastern Standard Time on Thursdays on YouTube. And that's it.
And I believe you have merch. Maybe you're wearing it right now.
Oh, yes. I forgot. I have it's backwards. Choose Sadness merch. I had my coffee mug over here earlier, but Choose Sadness, if you don't know, is a spin on Rachel Hollis's Choose Joy. And basically it's a way to remember that all of this stuff about toxic positivity is garbage. And if we could really choose our emotions, we would be choosing, to be sad or choosing to be angry. And it's just not that easy sometimes. So it's just like, well, we don't like to choose joy all the time. So we're going to choose sadness. And it's kind of like a representative of the community of feeling all of your feelings and being okay with having feelings other than only joy all the time. And so if you buy something or you choose sadness in your life, you'll become part of the sob gang, which is kind of like what the community calls itself and what I call the community too. So you can join the sob gang by choosing sadness.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on the channel and letting me interview you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me and asking me. I'm glad you slid into the DMs. That was exciting.
I gotta get in there.